Put your players' height and weight on the damn website. Stop being cowards about it.
More than ever this year, I'm starting to run into this beyond Oregon. I think it's a tactic. They are staying away from it publicly.
Put this shit on the website. Come on.
Also, like, what does he have to hide? You're 6'5", 255.
I know. He's 6'5", 255. I'm sure that Texas didn't want to put 400 next to Devondre Sweat's name if he was ever playing a 400 at Texas.
Instead of weights when they don't want to put it, they should put items that are equivalent to the weight, so you have to go the extra mile. Like filing cabinet in parentheses.
And then you got to do the work to Google the standard weight of a filing cabinet.
72.5 PS5s. And then you're really like doing the homework. That's what schools should do if they really want to be like that about it. We'll do the work. That's why we're here.
No, actually, I don't want to do the work. That's actually how this rant started. Put it on the damn website. Welcome to the opening bell of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That is Connor Rogers joining y'all for another edition of the Summer Scouting Series. Today we're talking tight ends. I know the position can sometimes be a little bit up and down, but there's some good players to talk about in this class. I think we're going to have a fun conversation here. I know it's not everybody's favorite episode, but we're going to have a good time previewing what is the 2025 tight end class. Anyways, Connor, how the hell are you, my friend?
I'm good, man. Listen, another position group down. Always, tight end's interesting. Like, if you're here watching or listening somewhere, I would say this is the episode you're definitely a diehard. And I'm not telling people to skip this because a lot of tight ends get drafted every year. A lot of tight ends from the 5th round hold on to 9-year NFL careers. Like, this is a position that matters so much. And I think it is not hard to scout, but hard to find who to scout. Because, Trevor, I was joking with you off the air. I mean, I watched players that had under 300 yards last year.
Right.
It's like, oh, maybe something's here. Like, college teams don't traditionally use the tight end as much as, obviously NFL teams. And you just have to, you have to cut a little deeper. So I just want to give a little appreciation to those diehards that are on this episode.
And I think you're totally right, because tight ends to me are real football players. You have
to do everything.
Not that there's other positions that aren't real football players, but tight ends have to be tall, big, strong, fast, catch, block, run routes. Tight ends have to do everything. So like, these are the true football players. And like you said, it's not as easy to just go to the stats column and see, a bunch of catches, a bunch of receiving yards, and then you get to fully appreciate tight ends. This episode is truly going to be, you got to watch. You have to watch tight ends to really kind of know what you're talking about here. So I'm excited to hear the back and forth between everybody as we kind of get into the comments after this episode is over. So I'm excited to get to that. Look, and I'm not going to lie. Well, we'll do full transparency first. I'll start it by saying that currently, as this episode is out, your boy's enjoying a little bit of time on the beach with some family. I'm enjoying a little bit.
By the way.
What'd you say?
Well earned, well deserved. By the way, it's about damn time.
Thank you. No, so I'm on PTO right now as this episode is dropping, and so you and I are recording a little bit early, so we had less days to watch a certain amount of these players, and we're like, all right, tight ends. Okay, I thought I was going to go into this list thinking that most of these guys were just going to be organic, grass-fed, Wagyu, 45-day dry-aged cheeks.
Oh, man.
And you know what? They're not.
No.
They're not. It's actually a fun class. So today we're talking about the top fives, and we're going to talk about, obviously, as you guys know, some players outside of our top fives as well. Before we get into it, I was pleasantly surprised by this group. I really was.
I was too, because it's one of those where you go in and, like, take you behind the curtain. I don't know how you do it. As I'm watching them, I'll slot guy, like, my rankings tab by position is just next to my master doc, which is where I write all my notes, heights, weights, every bit of information about these players, too much information about these players. Then the next tab is my position rankings. And if I like a guy a little bit, I'll throw him on there. And then I start to, copy and paste and move them around after I've watched 10 plus where it gets crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a little nervous because it didn't start off so well. I watched like 7 or 8, and I think I had like 2 guys on there, and I'm like, oh man, I don't know, Jim. and then all of a sudden I just hit my stride where I ran into like 3 in a row that I was like, it was either a mismatch player or a really good balance player. And I think it's one of those classes that is definitely volume over the quality, but the volume was, really well rounded here.
Yeah, I really didn't want to get that text from you yesterday, like, "Hey, buddy, I don't know if I could fill an entire episode with
which
these guys."
I do often send.
we avoided that. So we avoided that here, which is good. But like I said, there's so many different ways to evaluate the tight end position. Some guys you can tell their calling card at the NFL level, it's going to be blocking, but that's okay. Yeah. Like there are. It's like even for teams that emphasize tight end more than others, the ones that don't emphasize tight end at all, I mean, these guys are special teams guys. You need to be able to play 12, 13 personnel once you get into goal line, short yardage formation. So it's every team in the NFL, whether you emphasize tight ends a lot in the receiving game or a little, you have value or you have a spot on your roster for whatever archetype these kinds of players are. And so that's what makes them very plentiful when it comes to the NFL draft. And that's why evaluations for them can be so fun when we get into especially a season like this with summer scouting, where a lot of it is projection and what we hope these guys can be. So I will let you kick it off with number 5 here. We will go back and forth as we always do with our top 5s here for the tight end position. Who you got first?
Number 5 for me is Terrance Ferguson from Oregon. And I feel like it's been a very heavy summer scouting the last 2 weeks. We had a couple of receivers from Oregon on that episode. Now I start with Terrance Ferguson, who is just all around very solid and getting better over the years. And I think with him, he was ironically the last tight end I watched when I went back to that rant I had where he was the last guy I watched. I didn't know if I'd get to him. I was like, damn, maybe I should have prioritized him. I think he should get a little bit more hype. Last year, 414 yards on 42 catches, 6 touchdowns. Somebody to me that, okay, he's not overly explosive or overly fast, but really uses his size and catch radius in the red zone to climb the ladder and make plays. And some of his catches in 2023 were spectacular. I mean, one was a one-handed catch in the end zone. There's a couple where he could just, once again, climbing the ladder over the coverage or adjusting back to the ball. Someone to me that really took care of the targets he got by catching the football. I think there's obviously at the tight end position, you have some guys that they're just not natural pass catchers, or they're not comfortable. They're carrying a lot more mass where it's harder to adjust. I thought he was somebody to me that seemed pretty smooth. And now there's a track record here with him where 6 touchdowns in 2023, 5 touchdowns in 2022, another year where he almost got to 400 yards as well, where he's not a target monster. I mean, he's only made it to 50 targets once, but the fact that he's making the most of the targets, I think he's pretty urgent with the ball in his hands where he was able to pick up yards after the catch. And obviously there's space in this offense because this is an offense that usually has really good receiving talent that can open the middle of the field for him. I mean, just last year, 263 of his 414 yards were after the catch. So is he the most creative runner in the world? No, but he understands how to kind of go from pass catcher to runner and get up the field and try to make the most out of it. And I think he actually is pretty good at breaking tackles as well. I mean, 13 missed tackles forced last year as well, 27 first downs. So somebody that Bo Nix can rely on. I thought the blocking got a lot better last year too. I think this is someone that is helpful in pass protection, is adequate in run blocking, although continuing to improve. I have him at 6'5", 255, so you really like the size with Ferguson. He's just a rock solid tight end. He could play. I'd like him on the line of scrimmage, honestly, at the next level. There's other guys I watch where I'm like, damn, these guys are explosive. Play him standing up off the line, move tight end. I think he's a traditional wide tight end. So Terrance Ferguson was someone that definitely surprised me a little bit, and he's just a rock solid football player.
Yeah, so I did not watch Ferguson. He's one of the couple of guys that you watch that I haven't gotten to yet. And so I just hearing what you're saying of him, I was looking him up, just pulling up his numbers from the PFF database that we have. They're nice, man. I mean, this is somebody who I'm going to watch very, very quickly because I want to get him into the mock draft simulator. I want to make sure that people who know about him can draft him once we kind of update that bad boy. So, it is funny, just real quick. So the PFF Ultimate database that we have, it is the player profiles are linked to the school profiles. So the height and weight that the school lists you as auto-populates in our database so we can see it pretty easily. Oregon, put your players' height and weight on the damn website. Stop being cowards about it.
I've run into this more. I don't know about you, more than ever this year. I'm starting to run into this beyond Oregon now. I think it's a tactic, and I have a sheet where I had him on it, and I had him verified at what I said. I had him verified pretty close, 6'5", 255, but it's like you have to go the extra mile to get that. You know, when they go into scouts go in the spring and they can get a lot of that. But you're right, they are staying away from it publicly.
Put this shit on the website.
I know, it's crazy. And
Come on.
Also, like, what does he have to hide? You're 6'5", 255.
He's
if you're
6'5",
selective,
255.
like, who was the receiver last week that we talked about? That was 160. Tez Johnson.
Yeah. Tez
like,
Johnson, I get.
Right, it's okay. Let Tez Johnson bulk up to 175, then put it on the school. But for Terrance Ferguson, he's done the work. He's been there for a couple of years. You don't have to hide anything.
You could even be selective with it if you wanted to. Just give me the ones where I need to get the information.
Yes.
All right, so you don't want to put 160 next to Tez's name. It's fine. I'm sure that Texas didn't want to put 400 next to Devondre Sweat's name if he was ever playing a 400 at Texas. But they still put it up there. I mean, they probably lied about it, but
instead of weights when they don't want to put it, they should put items that are equivalent to the weight, so you have to go the extra mile. Like filing cabinet in parentheses.
But but the word about 5 filing cabinets.
Yes.
And then you got to do the work to Google the standard weight of a filing cabinet. And then of course you got to convert it from the metric system over to our system, so
72 and a half PS5s. And then you're really like doing the homework. That's what schools should do if they really want to be like that about it. We'll do the work. That's why we're here.
No, actually, I don't want to do the work. That's actually how this rant started. Put it on the damn website so we can link it here. So I haven't watched Ferguson, obviously, but that's somebody who, man, I'm just looking at his PFF athletic scores right here on his ultimate profile. And over the last 3 years, so 2021, 2022, and 2023, he had an athletic percentile above 90 every single year. 92 in his first year, 96 the year after, and 94.3 in 2023. So this is obviously somebody who moves very, very well, especially you mentioning him at 6'5", 255. Those are really good athletic scores for a player who's pushing 250, 255. Because there are players that we're going to talk about here that are lighter in weight. And it's a little unfair because their athletic percentiles are going to be higher, but then you have to be able to marry that information with their height and weight, because especially if their weight percentiles are lower, then actually, yeah, you better see athletic percentiles a lot higher, or all of a sudden we got somebody who might not make it in the league off of an athletic baseline alone. So Ferguson, somebody that I still need to watch.
Yeah, like I said, it's not like you missed like a blue chip player necessarily, but I think because of the nature of how much talent that Oregon offense has produced the last couple of years, he's just this guy that's flown under the radar, and it's definitely his time. And you look back at it now, and they did a good job convincing him to come back to school for one more year.
Is Benjamin Yurosek in your top 5?
He's not, but I did watch him again, and I'm pretty sure he's been on summer scouting now for 3 years, right?
Well, he's been draft eligible for 3 years.
And he had a monster year at Stanford a couple of years ago, and it has not gone that way since. Is he 5 for you?
So he is 5 for me.
Right.
Because if he was in your top 5, then I was going to get a little bit nervous, because I think we'll probably have most of the same top 5.
Pretty close, yeah.
But if you would have had Ferguson at 5 and Yurosek would have been higher, then all of a sudden one of the guys I really like wasn't even going to be in your top 5, and I was going to be floored by that. So we avoided.
Okay. We might, maybe. You never know. I think 4 might surprise you a little bit, and then I thought my top 3 were not chalky, but they're like relatively household names.
Okay, well, I have somebody in my top 3 who is not a household name.
Cool.
So,
all right, let's rock and roll.
We get to fight later. That's great.
Yes.
All right, so Benjamin Yurosek, you mentioned tight end from Stanford. He is number 5 on my rankings going into the season. So he is entering his red shirt senior year. He was in the 2020 recruiting class. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's got to be red shirt senior year. So he was at Stanford, got a ton of playing time while he was at Stanford. He was a 3-year starter from 2021 all the way through 2023. Now he is at Georgia. As if Georgia didn't have enough
Insanity.
tight ends. He now goes to Georgia. And, I don't want to spoil anything because I'm going to talk about another Georgia tight end at some point later in the show. But it's just an embarrassment of riches over there. And, it's not fair. And as a Florida Gator grad, I think that somebody should step in. And I feel like the NCAA should just give them the death penalty for
Enough
doing
is
whatever
enough.
they're doing.
Yeah, you have a cap on just recruiting and transfer portal tight ends.
So Yurosek, he is 6'4", 243 pounds. So this is a guy who, like I was mentioning, is a little bit smaller. Now, we talked about this last year during summer scouting. The tight end position is, I think, going through a big transition period where it used to be if you weren't 250 pounds, you really weren't getting on the field as an NFL tight end. That's just not the case anymore. Like we're seeing at the wide receiver position, you can have players who you don't want to bet on these outliers, but there's so many smaller wide receivers that are making it in the league. And I'm not just talking about like the Tank Dells, like the super small players. Like I'm even talking about guys who are 170, 180, who are now playing in the league and much more common than they used to be. So when you see Benjamin Yurosek's measurables at 6'4", 243, and that's 38th percentile and 12th percentile, you go, okay, those are obviously really low percentiles for the position. But if you divide up the tight end group into inline blocking tight ends and receiving tight ends, then I think that percentile would go up for Yurosek because he is more of a move receiving tight end. And furthermore, if you take away the data from, let's just say, 2015 and years past, like if you only go from 2015 on, that percentile probably goes up. So you'll hear us reference some of the height and weight percentiles just because we like to give you guys full context of who's in the league. But ultimately, if you are a receiving tight end, I still think that you can make it at 6'4", 243, even though you're 12th percentile. So anyways, just wanted to kind of put that as a caveat because there's going to be a couple other guys that we talk about that are a little bit later or lighter in size. So Yurosek was a 3-star tight end when he was coming out in the 2020 recruiting class. He actually played tight end and outside linebacker in high school, won a state championship in football his senior season by playing both sides of the ball. Also won a state championship in basketball, averaged more than 14 points per game and 11 boards, out here averaging a double-double. Let's go, baby. Committed to Stanford out of high school. Like I said, played there for 4 years, was a starter from 2021 all the way through 2023. Missed a lot of that 2023 season last year due to a shoulder injury, and then he transferred over to Georgia. Got quite the family athletic background. Father played football at Colorado State. Mother played volleyball at Colorado State. And Connor, I think you mentioned this last year. His grandfather is credited with inventing the baby carrot.
That is correct. His grandfather is fully credited for inventing the baby carrot.
100% credited.
My dog thanks the Yurosek family.
Dude, my dog loves carrots.
Yes.
My dog smacks on carrots.
Yep.
Harder than any treat that we give him.
Yep.
Loves it.
Thank you, Yuroseks.
Anyways, Yurosek is, I think he is a good player. This is one of those guys who I think could be, back end of day 2 kind of a guy, at least right now. I don't know how much more he's going to be able to show at Georgia because it's a super crowded room, but I still think, he's like mid-round potential guy.
That's what's interesting, right? And I think you're going to talk about Oscar Delp. You kind of hinted at.
I am going to talk about Oscar Delp.
I'm fascinated because I think the usage for them, you would project the same way, but obviously that can't be the case.
Yeah, and they have
a really good freshman tight end.
Lucky is a 4-star tight end, and he was playing last year when Bowers was hurt.
Yes, it's insanity.
Again, the NCAA needs to step in.
Somebody's got to step in.
And it's not going to be the NCAA. We know that.
No.
Okay, so strengths for Yurosek, who I think is a good receiving tight end. Well, I'll list some of the weaknesses first because I think there's more strength. At 243, despite kind of everything that I said, giving these guys a little bit of the benefit of the doubt with the style that they're playing, to me, he lacks the mass to be a full-time inline tight end at the next level. I think that you can get away with it. I think he's competitive. I think that he has some pride in blocking, right? I mean, like, I think that he's not going to just look lost or whiff out there when he's in the line or in line, but you're not going to want him as like tight end one attached to the line of scrimmage, really taking defensive ends one-on-one. That's not what you want. Instead, this guy's going to be a move tight end for you, athletic enough to play wide receiver spots, both outside wide receiver and in the slot. I think he's very quick out of his three-point stance. So if you have him in line, he could really get up and into the field, up the seam. I think he's a good vertical stretcher, especially up the field. He's got strong, reliable hands, very few drops over the last couple of years. And I think the flexibility is pretty decent for him to have a diverse route tree. And that's important for a guy who's going to play in the slot or the outside. So I noted this in my film watch of him. He is the out and up or wheel route king, especially when they get him in motion. It's why I call him that move tight end, because when they get him on the move, he is going out to the line of scrimmage or he is going out to the sideline and boop, he is going immediately up the sideline. And there are very few linebackers or safeties that can get from in between the tackles in the box to catch up with him, especially when you add that change of direction there. So a lot of his big plays were on those out and up routes and on those wheel routes because he's got some good flexibility to be able to do it. So I think he's a really solid receiving type of tight end. Again, not somebody that you're going to ask to block defensive ends one-on-one, but somebody who you can get away with him being in 12 personnel, have him as a wing back off the line of scrimmage. He can block linebackers at the second level. He can block slot defenders. But where he's really going to make his money for you as a receiver in the passing game. So I did like Yurosek. I felt like he was a top part of the mid-round, so third round type of a player right now in his current state.
Yeah, I'm with you. He's not in my top 5, but I watched him and thought mid-round player for sure. I mean, not much has changed since we really liked him over the years. And I know he had a shoulder injury last year that really, really held him back, obviously, when you just Google the production. But definitely an interesting player because it feels like in that Georgia offense, he can get back to what he was at Stanford a couple of years ago, where from a production standpoint, he explodes. All right, so number 4 for me. Or do you want to go right to number 4 for you? Is it Delp?
No.
Oh, okay. Never mind. All right. 4 for me. We'll get there. Wow. I like that. 4 for me. Is that 4
for you? Is 4 for you, Delp?
No, Delp was 6 for me.
Okay.
Yeah. I had Delp at 5, and the last guy I watched was Terrance Ferguson.
All right. I might be a sicko.
So number 4 for me is Tyler Warren from Penn State.
Okay.
When watching Tyler Warren, who's about 6'6", really close to 6'6", 260. When watching Tyler Warren, all I could think about was the meme from Moneyball where Jonah Hill is at the whiteboard talking to Brad Pitt, and it's like, Billy, this is Tyler Warren. He could be one of the best tight ends in this entire draft. The only problem is he doesn't always catch the football when he's wide open. It's crazy. Like, there's a lot of good about this guy. Number 1, he's huge. He's massive.
How bad is his catch percentage?
It's not.
I didn't watch him.
It's not. It's that he has like the highlight reel level drops.
What did you say? Is Penn State? Is it
Penn State? Yeah, he was the other tight end with him and Theo, and he still had over 400 yards, 34 catches, caught 7 touchdowns. And honestly, it could have been more. He had 6 drops, and I swear 2 or 3 of them were like he's still thinking about it. Like one wide open, it's just times where it's like his brain.
I'm going to watch him right now.
You got to watch them. It's like his brain kind of shuts off, and it's like, dude, I know you can catch that because he has production. He can catch the football. He can be an effective receiver. There's just a couple drops where I'm like, no way. Like, absolutely no. Yeah, dude, I'm telling you. And the fact that I have him as the 4th tight end tells you how good the rest of the film is. Tells you how good the rest of the film is. You got this guy behind Delp? Oh, man. Yeah.
Or ahead of Delp? Oh,
yeah.
No. Dude, I just watched the wheel route one versus Massachusetts where he's wide open. You'll never have an easier touchdown in your life.
That one, I think he smacks his hands against his helmet. So I'm pretty sure I think he played quarterback in high school.
All right.
So let's give him a little bit of a pass here. He also played basketball and baseball. He was an all-state baseball player. So this guy is like a really good multi-sport athlete and obviously massive. His dad played football at Richmond from 1987 to 1990. His grandfather played football at Wake Forest. The sister played softball at East Tennessee. So, I mean, the whole and I think the aunt played soccer somewhere. Like, everybody in this family played a D1 sport. And it's multiple sports across the way. And like I said, with Tyler Warren, he played 3 sports in high school at a really high level. I think he was all region basketball, all state baseball. And I'm pretty sure, I don't want to mix this up because a lot of tight ends are high school quarterbacks. I'm pretty sure he was a high school quarterback. So I already said excellent size, but mass. A lot of these guys are tall and they're still filling out. He's already got the mass, wide frame.
260's good.
He's a junkyard dog as a run blocker. Like I'm on the line of scrimmage. When I climb to the linebacker, I'm going to bury the linebacker. They're totally different mentality as a blocker, man blocker, inside zone. I mean, I'm not ready to give him that like classic 6th offensive lineman label, but I think it's there. I think there's a chance in a year where we look at Tyler Warren as a prospect in the first 3 rounds of the draft, and we're like, oh, I'd like him as my 6th offensive lineman that can also hopefully impact the receiving game. And I thought he could handle run blocking duties in any scheme. He's athletic enough if you run zone, like he's still going to factor in as a run blocker. It just goes back to me the 6 drops he had, just kind of stabbing at the ball, lacking concentration at times. But I think if you're looking for maybe the best potential Y tight end in this draft, Warren has a chance to compete for it this year. He just has to get over the inconsistencies in his game. I was pretty excited about him. It's just if he's the same guy in a year from now when we talk about him as a prospect with that limits his receiving, he's more of that 4th rounder, maybe overachieves like a Tip Ryman and goes earlier.
Yeah.
But if his receiving game goes up a notch or 2 and it's a little more consistent, I think he's somebody that could fight to be a top 100 pick.
Yeah, I mean, he sounds, just the way that you're talking about him, sounds like a Tip Ryman type of player. And Ryman went 3rd round, right? I think he went.
Yeah, he went top 100.
Yeah, and that was earlier than I thought he was going to go.
Me
but
too.
It was that size, speed, strength combination that clearly the Arizona Cardinals were like, I mean, we would love to get another player like this on our roster. And it sort of makes sense for them. I do think that he was a little bit overdrafted, but for the blocker that he is, now you could free up Trey McBride to do a lot more stuff in the passing game. He had the highest receiving grade on the team last year. So you want to just allow him to be more flexible, and getting Tip Ryman allows you to do that. I think there's certainly a world. I'm just kind of looking at his PFF numbers just as an overview. I haven't watched him, but for Warren, 65th percentile in run blocking, positively graded run blocking plays, which is one of the highest percentiles that I've seen of any of the guys that I went through. So that, again, just speaks
That's
to...
his bread and butter, is like, true on the line of scrimmage tight end in an era of football that few and far between, man. Honestly.
And it's gonna keep playing. And I'll tell you why it's gonna keep playing, because I can't remember who pointed this out to me initially, but the Chiefs were running a ton of 13 personnel last year. And there were a couple other teams that were running a lot of 13 personnel, but they were passing a lot out of 13 personnel. Now you could say, well, that's a product that the Chiefs didn't really have receivers that they trusted. And I could see that. I could definitely see that. But I also wonder if Andy Reid and the Chiefs are kind of on the forefront of maybe where the game might be going a little bit, because you remember back in like 2017, when McVay first got the job with the Rams, he sort of took the league by storm when he was running a lot of different plays out of few formations. Right. It was a lot of the same look, but they could run out of it. They could pass out of it. They could run different passing plays out of the same look.
He lived in 11 early on.
They lived in like a condensed 11. It was 11, but the wide receivers were close to the line of scrimmage, so they could say, well, not only can we throw different passing plays at you from this formation, we can also run the ball from this formation.
That's why they all block.
We got those wide receivers closer to the line of scrimmage. Bill Belichick in the Super Bowl that year was their kryptonite, because Bill went, okay, we're just going to put 6 guys on the line of scrimmage. We're going to put 6 defensive linemen on the line of scrimmage. And then I don't care how many wide receivers you have close to the right. I don't care how many wide receivers you have close to the line. They're not going to be able to block a defensive lineman. So I think things have kind of evolved since that point. I wonder if a extension or evolution of that philosophy that McVay brought in 2016, 2017, I can't remember exactly which year it was, is passing out of 13 personnel, getting sort of the same thought process of, okay, we can run or pass out of any of these formations, but instead we're doing it with tight ends out there.
Right.
And these are guys who are 250, 260, not just 200 pounds like wide receivers would be. So, but we've got so many crazy athlete tight ends that are coming through. If you stockpile a lot of these guys, which the Chiefs kind of have a little bit, certainly Travis Kelce is at the top, but Gray is somebody that they've been able to rely on a little bit. And now obviously they're drafted Jared Wiley. They had Irv Smith Jr., right? Like I wonder if Tyler Warren, getting it back to this conversation here, is sort of a piece in that evolution for a team whenever he comes through, of this guy who is mainly a blocker, but he's also athletic enough to where you have to account for him. You can't just say, oh, there's multiple tight ends on the field. Oh, Tyler Warren's on the field. Let's get the extra linebacker in here. Let's get the heavier personnel in here for defense. You've got to be able to cover these guys as well. So I wonder if that's kind of where we're going, and he might be a piece for that.
Yeah, I feel like, we've seen the Bengals probably kind of thought that when they took Drew Sample in the second round. The Raiders this year will be a team like that. Everybody's like, how do you draft Brock Bowers after you took Michael Mayer the year before? Well, you're going to play both of them, and Michael Mayer is way bigger than Brock Bowers, so they could do different things for you. So, yeah, I'm with you. Absolutely.
All right, so number 4 for me, somebody who I got to think is in your top 3 now at this point. Luke Lachey, the tight end from Iowa.
I'll never quit him.
No, and you shouldn't.
If he went up for adoption, I'd be the first in line. We'll never quit him. He doesn't even have to play any games, and I still put him in my top 5 the next year.
Instead of like a rescue dog, you're just rescuing Luke Lachey.
Luke Lachey. For no reason. He's like, I have a great family. Leave me alone. Yeah, he's number 3 for me, so this is perfect.
Who are we? Was I talking with you about who was I? Oh man, where was I listening to this? I was talking with somebody the other day, and Will Smith tried to adopt the dog from I Am Legend. But you remember the movie, right? I mean, he's got the dog in the movie, whatever. He tried to adopt that dog, but that dog already had a family. Like the dog,
no, it's just an actor. It's just an acting dog. You don't just also get the dog. Pay us for letting you use the dog. Now, where you'd like to leave,
right? And also, screw you for asking to adopt our dog.
Okay, so this is really dark. Is there a price for Marvel?
No.
It's Will Smith.
No,
he can offer you $10 million.
No.
I would never give up Gracie.
The answer is no, because even though the answer could be yes, the answer is actually no. The answer is no. The answer is absolutely no. No price tag.
Comment below. Is there a price for your beloved fur baby?
This is actually, yeah, I want to know. I want to know what the price is. People say that there's a price for everything. My price is no for Marvel. Luke Lachey, he is a redshirt senior now at Iowa, I believe. He was in the 2020 recruiting class, so he must be a redshirt senior. Yeah, no, that's how math works. Yes, Iowa, another one in the royal line of Iowa tight ends. Last year, they had Eric All. They had Luke Lachey. The year before, they had Sam Laporta. It's, again, an embarrassment of riches at that position, but they're churning out so many of these dudes in the NFL. If they could just get some semblance of any sort of passing attack at all, maybe they'd be good on offense in college as well before they got to the NFL. But look, I think that Lachey, we talked about a little bit last year because he was draft eligible. He ended up coming back because he had a broken ankle last year, I think is what it was.
He did, yeah. Season-ending surgery on the right ankle.
Yeah, 3 games into the season, he ended up having a broken ankle. High school, he played wide receiver, he played tight end, he played defensive back, so he played a lot of different positions. His father, Jim Lachey, played offensive tackle for 10 years in the NFL. He was with the Chargers, the Raiders, the Redskins, a number 12 overall pick in the 1985 draft, and he was a 3-time All-Pro. So we've got former first-round NFL bloodlines here with this dude, and he does feel like he plays like somebody who's got some NFL influence on him. He's got really good size for the NFL at the position. He's 6'6", which is 86th percentile, 253rd percentile 253 pounds, which is 52nd percentile. Reading is difficult. Really good size for the NFL, as I mentioned. Straight line speed, I think, is well above average. I think it's something that could be really effective at the NFL level, especially if you put him in a vertical offense. You allow him to get going. I think he's got some nastiness to the run game. I think he's more of a receiver than he is a blocker, but he's got some nastiness in the run game when he goes up against the linebackers. Connor, his separation percentage versus single coverage is way worse than I thought it would be. 7th percentile. I thought it'd be a lot better because I think he's a really good linear athlete. But he does. I'm watching the film and it's like, I feel like he should be separating a little bit better from these receivers because I feel like he's got the athleticism to do it. But I guess he's still just kind of learning how to fight those guys off and get the nuance of route running down. I feel it can be in the cards for him because of how athletic he is. But I just feel like he's a really solid all around tight end. I don't think he's a world beater. I think he is somebody who, again, like Yurosek, like I mentioned, can be a nice day 2 pick, probably a 3rd round pick at this point. But he does a lot of stuff well. I think there's a world where a fully healthy season from him can be the best that we've seen yet as a pass catcher, can maybe be even better as a pass blocker. And I think that he just has a pretty high floor as a tight end, somebody that'll be at the very least a tight end 2 at the next level.
I'm with you all the way with Lachey. I know he basically missed last year. He only had 10 catches through the 3 games. You brought up his dad, who was a 3-time first-team All-Pro. But you just watch the tape when he does play. He's long. I think that separation score is interesting. And I do think he's more of like a 4.7s kind of guy at the position rather than a sub 4.7 kind of player. But I still think he has length and athleticism, catches the ball over coverage. I mean, on 3rd down, it feels like you see big flashes. It's like 3rd and 10. It's like, go find Luke Lachey. And when they can actually get him the ball, he makes a big play. So let's see how he is coming off that season-ending ankle surgery. Let's continue to watch his blocking develop. But tight end 3 for me. And somebody that I'm really excited for him to be healthy this year.
Yeah, above 96% catchable passes caught percentage in 2022. Yes, yeah. I mean, like everything that touched his hands in 2022 was corralled. I mean, he was bringing it in for a big catch, whether it was on 3rd down or not. He just, to me, it's easy tight end 2 at the next level. Maybe he develops into a tight end 1. So I think that's somebody that's a solid day 2 pick.
Okay, so that was tight end 4 for you?
Yep. Yeah,
and that was 3 for me. So back to you for 3, which I think is going to be Oscar. We're still going. Okay. Wow.
Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame is number 2.
Not in my top 5, but I did watch him.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa, hold on now. Who do you have at 2?
Nesbit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, from North Carolina.
I'm not the biggest.
You don't think he's a tight end?
Yeah. Basically.
I get it.
I just don't.
Opinions on him are going to be all over the place.
I don't really think that he's a tight end.
Yeah, it just depends how you use him. I mean, he's 230 pounds.
Talk to me about Nesbit, because we'll bounce back to Mitchell Evans. I'm sorry if we're bouncing around on the pod, but I want to hear your thoughts on Nesbit, because Nesbit was 7 for me. This
is really interesting because Delp is 6 for me, and I feel like we're getting close to that kind of flip. Okay, so Nesbit 6'5", I have him 6'5", 230. Yep. Senior tight end at UNC. He had 585 yards on 41 catches and 5 touchdowns last year. He had 507 yards with 35 catches and 4 touchdowns the year before. He just has speed and length at the position. Like, if you need a big slot, he's a mismatch. That I saw him have explosive plays. I mean, he caught 7 of his 15 targets at 20-plus yards. Mm-hmm. Like, he's the only tight end I watched where he was creating massive chunk plays. Mm-hmm. And down the field. And yeah, it's nice when Drake May's your quarterback, but
right, it does help.
He is very efficient over the intermediate middle of the field as well. Caught 8 of his 12 targets for 126 yards and a touchdown. He has no fear of getting absolutely crushed over the middle of the field. Like, he constantly works over the middle of the field, whether he's running the seam, running the post route, and he will get popped in the middle of the field and get back up. And I get it. He's 230 pounds, right? And I think they list him 235, but he's 230 pounds. He's a massive liability when they ask him to help in pass pro.
Right.
And there's times where he body catches, which ruins his transition from being a pass catcher to runner. Because keep in mind, this guy's fast. So if he catches the ball cleanly and starts to run, he's galloping.
I wonder what his top speed is. Because the top speed is good. I don't know, man. I felt like his speed was way more build up than it was like twitchiness.
But he runs real routes.
So that is my favorite part of Bryson Nesbit from North Carolina.
He's running wide receiver route tree. And I get it. You go, well, he's a big wide receiver. if he's really good in the slot or slightly off the line of scrimmage or working across the formation, that is a real position in the NFL.
Yes,
And I actually think his perimeter blocking, when he's blocking in the slot in outside zone, is good. He can block corners. He can block safeties. He can block smaller outside linebackers. He is terrible when they throw him on the line of scrimmage and go, hey, handle the defensive end coming at you one-on-one. He's going to get killed. So it's like, you have to accept what he is. And if you like that kind of player, you'll like him. But I totally understand your viewpoint of why it's hard to wrap your mind around him being a tight end.
Yeah. It was the blocking categories really take things down from his overall grade for me. But I thought the build-up top speed for him was good. I didn't think that he was super. How do I say this? Like, I don't know. Like, there are plays where he looks fast, and there are plays when he just looks like he's
just
running in mud.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do with that. I don't know what to do. I don't know. He's a really unique player that I just don't quite understand the projection for. Maybe he is just that big slot player, and maybe you're using him in a specialized role, and maybe that role is going to be successful in the NFL because they're just going to put him in this streamlined role, which is you're going to play in the slot, you're going to line up against smaller defenders, and you're going to catch over the top of them, or you're going to go up the seam. And if they do that, I can understand a role for him at the NFL level, but it's hard to watch a lot of these other tight ends, even good receiving tight ends, who are better in line, better blockers overall, who might have a little bit more quickness to them, a little bit more elusiveness. And it's hard for me to really stack him up above these other guys. I get the size with the height, because he is like, what is he, 6'5", 6'6"?
And he's got long arms.
He does have very long arms. And I want to say he has the best route running IQ, I think, of any of the tight ends that I watched.
I would agree.
I mean, I'm watching him get off the line of scrimmage with an actual purpose, an actual release. And there were times when he'd have like a triple break in his route. And he'd be like, all right, I'm going here. No, I'm going here. Oh, I'm just kidding. I'm turning around. It's like, okay, I see you. And so I scored him very highly in those categories. I just was not convinced about the rest of his game. I don't know, man. I was the same way last year with him as well. A lot of people
we already did this.
Really pumping him up, and I'm not as bullish on him with his transition to the next level.
I get it.
So.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what he does in that offense this year. But I think he has 2 years of being a productive pass catching tight end, and there weren't a lot of guys in this group that have that on their resume right now.
That is true. And I mean, do you want to just talk about who my number 2 is then?
Well, we got to do 3 is Mitchell Evans for you, right?
3 is Mitchell Evans. Yeah.
We should talk about him quickly. I'll just give you my number one concern with him. He tore his ACL in 2023, which is
not ideal.
It's not ideal. I just think he's slow, Trevor. I just think he's really slow. And I
don't think he's really slow.
I don't know. He's going to have to be an amazing blocker and zone eater to be a starting tight end, because I really think linebackers can run. I don't know. That was my number one concern. And I don't know if I'm going to get an answer on that because he's coming off a torn ACL. So it's hard to be like, oh, well, he doesn't look as explosive. That was my number one thing that had me kind of hung up with him.
Yeah, I mean, I have in my notes here, he's not a very twitchy player. He's not somebody that's going to get off the line of scrimmage with a lot of explosiveness. He's not going to be able to put his foot in the ground and really be able to change direction on you. But I thought the top speed was adequate from him. Just strength and weaknesses. Has the frame and the measurables to line up in line and off the ball. I think he's got a lot of versatility there. He has the size because he is 6'5", 260 pounds. So that's 66th percentile and 70th percentile. So what we talked about when you were mentioning Tyler Warren, I mean, Mitchell Evans is somebody who I think it sounds like what Tyler Warren is, maybe not as good of a blocker, but he had a positively graded run blocking percentage of 8.8%, which is 48th percentile. So it wasn't as high as Warren's 65th percentile, but still, I mean, I think that Evans is somebody that you could play in line, that could be a legit blocker for you, but I don't have any of the receiving concerns that you had with Warren with Mitchell. So I don't know. Maybe the athleticism is why he ended up only being a 3-star tight end. And I was talking to a buddy of mine, Mike Golick Jr., who obviously is, everything Notre Dame. And
Yep.
I was just texting him and I was like, how does Notre Dame keep doing this? Like, he's just reloading tight ends, Cole Kmet, Michael Mayer, and now like Mitchell Evans. I mean, like, it's just studs after another. And he's like, dude, and he said to me, he's like, Evans wasn't even really like supposed to be this dude either. He just kind of popped like a couple of years ago. And every time he got on the field, when Mayer wasn't there, he was able to play really, really well. And I hope he can recover to a near 100% level, because I think that he's got a lot in the tank as the emphasis for that tight end spot. I mean, there are some crazy catches that this dude has. One-handed catches through traffic. I mean, whether it's two hands, one hand, whatever, man, I think he's got really strong hands. So to me, this is another guy who is a day 2 type of tight end. But to me, like, I think that he's got second round potential in him for everything that he brings to the table. Yeah, I think that he could be that type of a dude.
You might adopt him.
Yeah, I might adopt him. Yeah. I need his family to tell me the price. What's the price? We're gonna get Will Smith involved. We're gonna rope him in, and we'll kind of create a think tank and get a nice little pool of money together, and we can adopt him.
So, all right. So tight end 2 is going to be a really interesting combo, I think. Is this Oscar Delp?
Yeah, it's Oscar. I'm not. You
should have like really pulled my leg there and been like, nope, it's not Oscar Delp. Yeah. And then when you got to 1, also said it's not Oscar Delp. It just never happened. It's like a scheme.
Damn, that would have been an elite bit.
Yeah, maybe next time. All right, talk to me about Oscar Delp, tight end 2.
Dude, he's good.
He is good.
He's really good.
I really wanted him to be in my top 5. He
should have been. You coward.
There's a lot of projecting still left to be done.
But
he's a good player. It. All right, please.
No,
I want you to.
No, okay. So obviously, Oscar Delp does not have a ton of production to his name. Now, I will say that if he was playing for basically any other team in the country, maybe that would not have been the case, because he was playing behind Brock Bowers. So, you were talking with, I think you were talking about with Bryson Nesbit, how he is a tight end who has legit production, right? He is somebody who's got legit production out there, and that carries weight for you. And I think that that's right for you to have that kind of weight, because Oscar Delp doesn't have that. When they wanted to emphasize a tight end in the passing game, they did so with Brock Bowers, and Delp got on the field a lot, but it was sort of in a different role. So he does not have this production to his name. So him being tight end 2 for me is a lot of projection of, again, what I saw on the field and how I went, whoa. With no more Brock Bowers on the team, if he kind of has that Brock Bowers role, we're talking about a really, really talented player. So what I like about Delp, who, by the way, 6'5", 245 pounds, so a little bit lighter. The height is 66th percentile. The weight is 18th percentile. He's a junior at Georgia, was a 4-star coming out, played defensive end, cornerback, and receiver before switching to tight end later in high school. I think as a junior and a senior, he switched over to tight end. Here's the thing about him, which is really important to remember about his background as we start to talk about his strengths and weaknesses and why I like him a lot. He played lacrosse in high school, and I was reading an article about him. He actually thought he would go play lacrosse in college. And when he was a junior, there's a certain date. I don't think it's your birthday, but there's like a certain date where at midnight of this date, schools can start to reach out to you for scholarships. Maybe it is his birthday. Maybe it was when he turned a certain age, or maybe it was something in his junior year, whatever. And he stayed up until midnight. His family stayed up until midnight because they thought they were going to get texts immediately from coaches around the country for him to come and play lacrosse. He didn't get any for lacrosse, but one of the first texts that he got was from the University of Michigan. And they were like, yo, we want you to play tight end. And him and his family were like, okay, didn't really expect that. And then from that moment on, the offers just started flooding in for him to play tight end. And he has that lacrosse background to him. And even though he did get some offers to play lacrosse, obviously it was much better offers to play tight end in football. So he ends up going the football route. But this guy moves like a 6'5", 245-pound lacrosse player.
Yeah.
So I watch him get off the line of scrimmage out of a 3-point stance. I watch him put his foot in the ground and fully turn his hips for an in-breaking or out-breaking route. I watch him execute a speed route next to a defensive back that's in off coverage to get behind him in between the safety level. I see the breaks and the routes, all of this stuff, man. And you see incredibly fast footwork and overall body quickness for a player that is 6'5", 245 pounds. The movement skills that he has because of that lacrosse background make him an incredibly valuable receiving tight end. I think he is a really impressive all-around athlete. He's got an explosive first step to him. The change in direction and flexibility and acceleration to me is basically only second to the guy that we're going to talk about at number 1 on this list. And that's what really put Delp in this conversation for me, is because of what he was able to do there. Connor, separation scores for Oscar Delp. 99th percentile in general separation. So that could be when you're going up against single coverage or just soft zone. So finding those soft spots in the zone. And then 91st percentile in separation created versus single coverage.
That's really impressive.
This dude can move and move really well. The thing that I love the most about him, though, is when you get to pair that with his blocking ability. Now, 6'5", 245, okay. It's not going to be the best blocker in the world.
He's going to get bigger, though.
You're not going to want him to go one-on-one versus defensive ends. But when he was on the field, he was the tight end attached to the line of scrimmage. It wasn't Brock Bowers. They attached Oscar Delp to the line of scrimmage to free up Brock Bowers. And because of that, Delp got a ton of experience as a blocking tight end. They used him as a lead blocker. They used him at the top of the triangle on bunch sets. They would use him on toss plays out for the running back to run out to the sideline. They're looping this guy out as the lead blocker in space. So they trusted him a ton to be a blocker, and I think that baseline is huge for him. 55th percentile in positively graded run blocking snaps. So to me, Connor, this dude was the total package. The only thing that I really have lacking from Oscar Delp is the experience and overall volume as a receiver. So he doesn't really have a lot of great yards after catch feel.
Yeah.
But he's got great yards after catch athleticism to him. So I think that's still in the tank. And then, of course, weight profile is a little bit lower. And you mentioned he could still put on some weight. I think that Delp could absolutely play, around 250 pounds. And if he does that, he only gets better at blocking. And the blocking grades were pretty good as it is last year as a sophomore. So it's an embarrassment of riches at Georgia. They've got Benjamin Yurosek, who just transferred in. They've got Lawson Luckey, who's another 4-star tight end, who's, I think, going to be awesome. And then they have Oscar Delp taking over for Brock Bowers now that Brock Bowers, one of the greatest college prospects of all time, is now in the NFL. And his film, to me, was so impressive. I think that he could potentially, I don't know, I might get roasted for this at some point, but I think that he could be on that like TJ Hawkinson type of train. Now, I don't think he's going to go number 8 overall.
Yeah,
those
days are probably behind us. Yeah.
Very high in the draft. But what Hawkinson does as an overall athlete and as a good blocker in line, you could play Hawkinson in line. You could play him as a wingback. You could play him in split zone formations as a blocker. You could play him in the slot. You could play him in the outside. I think Oscar Delp has the potential to be that type of a player. So obviously, I like him a ton, having him at the tight end 2 spot.
I wrote down, I thought his technique was really good as a blocker, despite just having limited strength and mass. Right? When I saw him not be able to sustain a block, it was rarely because his hands were misplaced or his timing was wrong or his base was wrong. It's just there's only so much you could do when you're about 240 pounds and you're in the trenches against a defensive lineman. So I thought that was a really, really good sign. He's clearly coached very well at Georgia. He takes the coaching. You brought all this up, like reliable hands for off-target throws or through contact. He loves to try to hurdle tacklers. Sometimes it goes really well. Sometimes it goes really poorly. But that's the kind of athlete he is, that he knows he could do it at that size. So
I'm a big fan, man. I think he's in for a very big year. I really do.
I don't think you're crazy at all. He would be if I was doing an all projection guy on this list, he'd be number 1.
I keep going back to, if this dude's playing on basically any other team in the country, his numbers would be so much better as a receiver. But he was at Georgia.
And we might not get that answer this year. Yurosek might be using the Bowers role.
Don't put that on me.
Yeah. I mean, hey, The tape is still good, so it's not like we're clueless on him. All right, number one. I mean, I felt like this would be a position group that number one would be consensus for us, but Colston Loveland from Michigan.
Yeah, obviously it's Brant Keithy.
Yeah,
number one.
it's obviously it's. Let's keep going down the list here. Oh man, it's hold on, I'll get there eventually. It's Joshua Simon from South Carolina.
Of course, yes.
6th year. Hey, I was telling you, Simon. I liked Simon when I watched him. He just never gets the ball, so it's tough to pop when you don't get the football.
But you saying the 6th year thing reminded me of this. This is just for a little teaser for anybody who reads when I put this information in the mock draft simulator. This is my Brant Keithy, the first sentence for his scouting summary.
Oh no.
Keithy's been in college since 2018. And then I have in parentheses in quotes, yeah, they're called doctors from Tommy Boy.
It's perfect. Letting you put that in there is phenomenal. I had to write for Keithy that he will turn 25 a few months before the draft.
Cool, man.
That's pretty rare territory. But Keithy, for those that don't know, dealing with significant injury. So rooting for him. All right, Loveland.
He was fun in 2021, but yeah, let's talk about Loveland.
Loveland last year, 45 catches for 649 yards and 4 touchdowns for, I don't know if you heard, the championship Michigan Wolverines.
Heard about him.
As a true sophomore. Mm-hmm. 6'5", 245, former Gatorade Football Player of the Year in Idaho. Mm-hmm. He was also a tight end in high school. So this guy, he's a tight end. And you see it when you watch a sophomore play on a college championship team. Plays both on the line of scrimmage and in the slot.
Yep.
Excellent adjustments, uses his size to secure the ball, improvises routes to work with a moving quarterback. A legit burst, working up the seam. Athletic enough to be a blocker off of motion or just on the move in general. He did all of this while he was playing 2023 as a 19-year-old. He's going to get bigger and stronger. I think he needs to arrive with more force as a run blocker. I think he finds himself on the ground when blocking too often. And I think that's okay because he's 19. He will fill out. Michigan's offense, it is hard as hell to play tight end because of what you are asked to do in terms of the balance. And this guy was a dominant pass-catching weapon as a sophomore. He was absolutely dominant. And there was... I'll say this was kind of interesting to me, Trevor, when watching it again, watching J.J. McCarthy for the 90th time. McCarthy at times falls into a habit of only throwing fastballs. Mm-hmm. And I think Loveland deserves a lot of credit for catching some of them. I noticed this when I went and watched, he had a couple drops in the year, barely. And I was like, nobody was catching those. It's 100 miles an hour when he's 5 feet away from McCarthy. So I think that's something McCarthy will work on at the next level, is throwing changeups and in the offense. But I think Loveland, that's what jumped out to me in some of his catches where I'm like, that ball is thrown as hard as McCarthy can throw it and didn't necessarily need to be. And he still can adjust and make a play. He's a really, really gifted pass catcher for that age.
He's a really gifted athlete.
And I think player. Yeah.
That's where it starts with him. I mean, you mentioned he played tight end in high school. He also played linebacker in high school. So he's got kind of both sides of the story, if you will, because he's playing tight end. And then on the other side of the play or on the line of scrimmage, he's also gotten into the mind of the players that guard him as well and how you do that. And I think that sort of mastery of the situation of tight end versus linebackers in coverage and how they go about, passing him off in zone or what they want to do with him in single coverage. He's got a background, literal experience in how to attack linebackers because he's done it before. He played it before. So I think that's obviously what has allowed him to stand out really early. Also played basketball in high school. Got his basketball stats right here. 12.5 points per game, 8.5 rebounds per game. Not quite the double-double, but that's all right. That's all right. Still a pretty good basketball player. Chose Michigan over Alabama, LSU, Auburn, and other schools. Basically, everybody wanted Colston Loveland there in their program. Really impressive PFF numbers overall. Separation percentile, 95th percentile overall. And then 81st percentile in separation versus single coverage. It's a really high mark for him. Yards per route run. So this is a measure of how often you are targeted when you are running a route. Are you an emphasis in your offense? Colston Loveland, 92nd percentile. So they wanted to get this dude the ball quite often. He had the highest wins above average mark for any of the tight ends that I watched at 0.27, which is a pretty dang high mark for a tight end. My sort of scouting summary for him, I'll just read it off because I feel like that'll be the best way to describe it. Loveland is an ideal tight end prospect for today's game. He is smaller in weight than average NFL tight ends, but such are the times for the position, especially for receiving tight ends. He is also lighter because his calling card is as a receiver. His movement skills are excellent, and that includes change of direction, body control, and flexibility. He has natural hands for some really sweet catches, even through traffic. He's a good blocker for his weight, but you probably don't want him one-on-one against defensive ends. For what he brings in the passing game, this should be a day one player. That's what I think about him.
I mean, we're in lockstep. It was just so easy to watch this film. Like I just went through it. He was the first guy I watched, and I was like, damn, this will be an easy couple days here.
Right.
And then there was nobody even in the same stratosphere. So.
Yeah, and then you didn't watch anybody good until like the last day. That's on you.
The final 3 hours, I was like, oh boy, we better. And we made
coming down to the wire. Can I get a draftable grade?
Yeah, man, he's awesome. It's good to have a tight end one in this. Now, for those at home, he's obviously, we're not saying he's Brock Bowers, but he's,
I've been doing player comps for a lot of these guys, and he's the trickiest one to me of the tight ends. There's some other ones that I was able to kind of like come up with that I'm pretty happy with, but Loveland, it's like, man, he's so good as a receiver. The measurables are very similar to Kyle Pitts, but like I go back and look at Kyle Pitts' PFF data points and and his film, and it's like, dude, Pitts is an alien. I'm never comparing anybody to Kyle Pitts.
No,
he was an alien. He's an alien coming out. It's crazy that the Falcons have not been able to utilize him even more because the film is insane. The data points are insane. So I don't think he's quite Kyle Pitts, but like, I know his production hasn't been as high, but Isaiah Likely, kind of like as an athlete, what he is before and after the catch.
Right. I think you're onto something there.
I think people expect Loveland to have better or more volume than Likely has had at the NFL level. But again, like Likely is mainly playing behind Mark Andrews. And when he's been able to be impactful, I think he's very impactful. So the comp that I like the most is Isaiah Likely. Obviously, I believe that Loveland's going to get drafted higher than Likely did. But in terms of who Likely ended up becoming in the NFL, I think that Loveland can be along a similar archetype.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I think he's a little bigger, but some of the college production is similar to Trey McBride.
Oh, okay.
Now, McBride is bigger. No, Loveland is.
No way.
McBride on his mock draftable is 6'3", 5'8", 246.
Whoa, no way.
Isn't that shocking? I was shocked by that too.
I bet McBride plays in the 250s.
I think so too. It was definitely combine weight.
Let's see if the Cardinals have him listed as something different.
That'll be interesting.
No, they have him as his combine weight.
I agree, though. McBride does not
He's bigger, man.
He's bigger.
He's bigger.
I'm pretty sure McBride's
a good receiver.
Was the same way where I thought McBride also played tight end in high school and basketball in high school. And just like you saw how he was Colorado State's offense.
The entire offense.
He was the entire offense. And not saying Loveland is Michigan's offense, but he's a huge part of it. Yes. There's something different about those guys that they are just so polished at the position because they've played it for so long that it gives you a way higher floor. I think Loveland might be a better athlete, but McBride, and why he's had so much success at the NFL level after having so much success at the college level, he's just so good at the position, like the nuances of the position.
Dude, Trey McBride in his last year at Colorado State.
1,200 yards?
Bro, he had a 95 receiving grade.
Oh, it was insane. He was insane.
Stupid. I'm trying to look up his yards per route run really quick. Because you mentioned like he was the offense. I also agree. I'm wondering if it's like 100th percentile. It's 97th percentile.
I mean, he was nuts. He had 90 catches for over 1,100 yards in 2021 at tight end.
Yeah. Yeah,
It was
97th percentile is insane
so
for a tight end.
yeah, pretty good group though, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Anybody else that we didn't do in our? Well, let's list off the top fives really quick. I'll list off mine.
yeah,
Benjamin Yurosek, number 5 on my list, a tight end from Stanford. Now he's at Georgia. Luke Lachey from Iowa. He is at number 4. Mitchell Evans, a tight end from Notre Dame, at number 3. Oscar Delp, number 2 from Georgia, and then Colston Loveland from Michigan is at number 1.
Oscar is a great name for a tight end. I don't know why. It's a very good tight end.
Yeah,
name.
but I feel like the name Oscar, Delp should be even more of the blocking tight end. You know, I feel like maybe Oscar should be 265. Diesel.
Maybe he'll take your challenge up this year because they have to open things up for Benjamin Yurosek instead.
I hate you. I hate you.
All right, number 5 for me, Terrance Ferguson from Oregon. 4, Tyler Warren from Penn State. 3, Luke Lachey from Iowa. 2, Bryson Nesbit from UNC. 1, Colston Loveland out of Michigan.
Anybody else that you want to shout out? I watched 2 other guys that we haven't talked about yet. I watched Jake Brenningstool from Clemson.
I did not watch him.
Former 4-star tight end. He is 6'6", 230 pounds. So it's sort of like the Nesbit thing, but not nearly as polished as Bryson Nesbit is. I think he's really athletic. I mean, I think he's a really good athlete. He reminded me actually of Colin Johnson from Texas, though. I mean, like, Brenningstool he's not going to be a tight end at the NFL level. And if he is, it's only going to be by name. In fact, the first sentence that I have of his scouting summary is Brenningstool is a massive wide receiver disguised as a tight end on the depth chart.
Perfect.
It's kind of just like that's how he is. So you kind of got to watch him through that lens. And then the other one is Caden Prescorn, who 0-star recruit out of high school, ends up walking on at Memphis, plays there for 3 seasons, redshirt his first year, played very little in 2020 and 2021. No, then he played for them in 2022, transfers over to Ole Miss. So he's a redshirt senior. He is somebody who has been around college football a long, long time, but he's got decent size, 6'5", 255 pounds. I just don't think he's a great athlete. Like, he's got some nice length to him, but he's not an overly imposing blocker. Doesn't carry a ton of weight in his lower half to be able to really anchor and really drive guys with good leg drive. He's got good length, but he's just not an explosive tight end. He feels like somebody who's going to be a mid to late day 3 type of a player, but Ole Miss tight end there.
Oh, yeah, I felt the same way with him. Another guy I watched. Somebody we didn't talk about, and I didn't watch him. He got hurt last year. But he's so hard to figure out what group to put him in. I know people are going to ask about him. We'll probably talk about him throughout the season because he's come back from injury. Gadsden from Syracuse.
I watched him last year, and I was like, he's a wide receiver.
Right. He's 6'5", 223.
I think they changed his position to tight end.
They did.
So he could break records.
Oh,
I genuinely, I mean, like, part of me truly thinks that they changed his position to tight end so that Syracuse's football program could get national accolades because he's going to own every tight end. Like,
they're playing chess, we're playing checkers. Yeah. So I just wanted to drop that nugget on there that you know, why we didn't talk about him. I didn't. He obviously got hurt last year. A couple of guys I watched. Mason Taylor from LSU. Was someone that I have him 6'4 3/4, 244. I thought he was a good blocker, understood leverage, knew how to get under pads, helped set the edge. Not much receiving yards beyond 10 yards. Like, he had last year, he had 348 yards on 36 catches, 1 touchdown, but it's just all kind of like check down, sit underneath play. I just didn't see much of a receiving threat yet. Joshua Simon, I briefly brought up, 6'3 3/8, 232, another lighter player, Trevor. I think he has really good hands, natural pass catcher, speed, tough runner with the ball in his hands. Like I said, though, they don't throw him the ball. He had 28 catches, 256 yards, 2 touchdowns. His most productive year was at 2019 at Western Kentucky. So, and a lot of his, big plays are off scheme dump passes. So hopefully they're a little more creative with him this year. Amari Niblack, a lot of people will probably talk about. He transferred from Alabama to Texas, 6'4", 231.
Yeah.
Former 4-star recruit, as both a wide receiver and tight end. He is very athletic. He only had 20 catches for 327 yards and 4 touchdowns for Alabama last year. So he probably went to Texas hoping to play more, but he's very, very athletic. I think he's just an athlete at the move tight end position right now. We need to see him actually be able to get on the field and make some more plays.
He was a super high recruit, I feel like.
He was. What was really
Four-star
interesting
athlete, yeah.
with Nyblack was, I think the opinions on him as a recruit were all over the place. Like there were some outlets that had him as a top 100 player. And then on ESPN's top 300, he was 297. So I found that really interesting. He's just the opinions are all over. Very light, very athletic. People will have their eyes on him all year if he could finally have that breakout season. The last one, that might have been all of them. I feel like we covered a lot of ground here. We mentioned Keith. He's been out for almost 2 years. We'll see what he can do coming back. You brought up a lot of the other guys as well. That was the group as a whole. Yeah,
I think that's more than 10 dudes. That's certainly everyone. That's top fives, but that's more than 10 tight ends. So there you go, folks. We would love to hear from you guys on the tight end position. We know it's not as flashy as wide receiver or running back, but we know you guys got takes. Of course, if there's somebody that's missing on this list that we really need to watch, let us know. We're reading your comments, especially the wide receiver episode. There's a lot of wide receivers that you guys are asked, hey, have you guys watched them? Chances are, if we didn't talk about them on the show, we probably didn't watch them. So the names that you guys give us, it helps the watch list, certainly for me to be able to get these guys on the mock draft simulator before college football season starts. So always feel free to give us some of the names of the players that we didn't quite have time to get to. Like we say all the time, this is not just a podcast of us talking to you guys. It's a draft community. So that's what it's all for. Building everybody's databases, getting some opinions out there. We would love to hear it. Best way to do that, YouTube comments, youtube.com/@NFL Stock Exchange. If you're audio only, you can still send your requests to us at Tampa Bay Trey and at Connor J. Rogers on X as well as Instagram. We are moving to the big beauties next. Not calling them the big uglies. We don't do that around here. We call them the big beauties. Interior offensive line and offensive tackles. Those will be the two next groups before we flip over to the defensive side of things. But Connor, you got anything else before we get out of here?
No, really fun group, deep. I'm sure we'll get a lot more names thrown at us. We appreciate that from everyone as we keep this train rolling onto offensive line, which I know already has some blue chip prospects in this group.
I know. I'm very, very excited to get to offensive line, especially the offensive tackles. We've got offensive tackles that could potentially. Now, I'm just saying from narrative, right? I mean, like hype. I haven't watched them yet. Haven't watched these guys yet. But some people are talking about
they could be terrible.
The offensive tackles potentially being like top 5, top 3, maybe even number 1 overall picks, since the quarterback class might not have a quarterback that might go number 1. So we shall see. But that's for another day, another episode. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That is Connor Rogers. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. We'll see you guys next week.